Constitutional rights are being trampled on. Laws are totally being disregarded. The courts are being disregarded.
This is what our founding fathers fought against. A tyrant king who acts without consent, without our representation, and without consequence.
Today, the people are not just protesting, they are testifying. And the question before this jury is whether power has crossed the line from governance into control without consent. The claim is severe. Millions of Americans allege that executive power is being used to override democratic limits. They allege constitutional rights are being ignored, courts are being challenged, elections are being targeted. This is not a policy disagreement. This is an accusation of systemic overreach.
And at a moment when Trump's Justice Department is arguing in court that this administration is entitled to seize local county election records in an unprecedented move. And while it looks to expand its efforts in more states ahead of a potentially game-changing midterm election, it's also a moment when Trump is trying to ram through a voting overhaul bill that could disenfranchise millions of you watching.
Let us examine the evidence. The allegation is not abstract. It is procedural. Seizing election records, expanding control across states, altering voting laws before a critical election. This is how power moves, not loudly, but administratively. Here is how the mechanism unfolds. First, authority is asserted over election systems. Then, legal justification is introduced through policy. Finally, enforcement mechanisms are expanded. Each step appears lawful in isolation, but together, they form a chain that leads to centralized control over the vote itself.
We're tired of what he's doing, with the government and how he's taking over, and he basically wants to be a king, and we don't accept kings in the United States,
Trump has enfolded a supine Congress and a Supreme Court with 6 very conservative members into a single branch of government, his.
The law is not just text. It is lived experience. The voter feels it. The protester voices it. Frustration, fear, defiance. This is not just political disagreement. This is a population questioning legitimacy.
Trump has enfolded a supine Congress and a Supreme Court with 6 very conservative members into a single branch of government, his.
Now we examine power. The accusation is not just about actions, it is about structure. If legislative restraint weakens, if judicial resistance softens, then power consolidates, not by force, but by alignment. The defense argues this. These actions are legal. They fall within executive authority. Election oversight is necessary. Immigration enforcement is lawful. Policy reform is part of governance. And protests are political theater, not legal proof. We will now dismantle that argument. Legality alone is not the standard. The question is proportionality. The question is intent. The question is precedent. When multiple systems, elections, courts, enforcement, are simultaneously influenced, the pattern becomes the evidence. Let us clarify the legal battlefield. This conflict involves executive orders, direct presidential actions, election authority, traditionally state-controlled, judicial review, courts assessing legality. When federal power attempts to override local election systems, it raises constitutional questions of federal overreach, voter suppression risk, statutory violations, and the remedy? Litigation, injunctions, emergency court orders. Now we ask the hardest question. Where were the institutions? Congress, accused of passivity. Courts, accused of delay. Agencies, accused of compliance. The system did not collapse overnight. It weakened step by step. The evidence shows a surge of public resistance, a pattern of expanding executive control, a legal system under pressure. This is not yet a conclusion of guilt, but it is a clear escalation, a test of whether democratic limits still hold. The people spoke, the courts responded, the system was challenged, but the real verdict is still pending. The prosecution rests.